and tribute of deity. It was customary in that polytheistic culture to acknowledge any god that they assumed proved to be powerful in a particular situation. This was not Nebuchadnezzar's conversion to the true monotheism, but just his reconciliation that Daniel's God was able to do something that the others could not. The affairs, the administration, the gate of the king, the court of the king, where the affairs of state took place in the providence of God. Daniel became an embedded bureaucrat whose tenure extended throughout the duration of the Babylonian Empire into the early years of the Persian. Thoughts for thoughts for personal family worship. The response of Daniel and his friends to the king's threat provides a lesson in the importance and power of prayer. Seemingly without panic or a second thought, they immediately took the matter to the Lord, casting their cares and concerns about him. It was a crisis prayer, and God answered them according to their need. Upon receiving the answer, Daniel was careful before doing anything else to return in prayer and expressing his praise and thanksgiving and worship to God, who so graciously answered their specific request. This episode should remind us that prayer is never to be a last resort when all else fails, but should be the first impulse when faced with any crisis. It also exemplifies the importance of thanksgiving for answered prayer. Daniel's initial conversation with the king is a great example of godly humanity. He could have immediately interpreted the dreams of Nebuchadnezzar and taken all the credit for himself, posturing for some reward or reconciliation by the king, but rather, even through the king was pressing for the interpretation, and much more delay would put all the wise men in jeopardy. Daniel took the time to give all the credit to God. We should always be more interested in God's glory than we are in our own. It may not be profitable to compare Nebuchadnezzar's dream with Daniel's vision in chapter 7. They are two revelations with a single message. Chapter 2 is a view of human power from man's perspective. The four metals suggest value and strength for an inanimate stone destroyed the statue for no apparent reason. Chapter 7 views the same from God's perspective. The beasts have no moral conscience and are destroyed for their terrible acts by the Son of Man. Together they demonstrate God's absolute control in the rise and fall of kings. Governments are in his hands, and that is just as true today as it was in Daniel's day. No matter how uncertain things seem, they are certain in God's unfailing purpose. Sorry, I'm struggling to read this in this light, so I'd either have better to go into the bedroom where I've got a light, or read it in the light where I can see the scripture. It's very, very small and I struggle to read it. It'd be good actually to have a magnifying glass. So thank you for listening. It's just worth thinking about the miry clay mixed with iron. The more I have meditated on it and what's going on now, and you know, the Catholic Church is an extension of the Roman Empire. We're still in the Roman Empire. All roads lead to Rome, as they say. But our roads don't. Our narrow path leads to Jesus Christ. But all their roads lead to Rome, and all the world's road leads to Rome, which is very true, you know. It's still very, very influential spiritually and influential financially, and you know, the Jesuits, and it's all very, very dark and horrific, and you know, and it's obviously pagan worship, but disguised. They're wolves in sheep's clothing, basically, exactly what Jesus Christ told us about. And so if we think along those lines, and what's happening now with transhumanism and all this technology, and they want to basically. I mean, you just have to watch Klaus Schwab and this guy that they worship, this false prophet who's actually homosexual. You know, not that I've got anything against people that are homosexual, but I don't agree with it. It says in the scripture that it's wrong, you know, and you know, and you can see the way it's pushed in people's faces and pushed in our kids' faces, that it's actually normal, and we're desensitized by it all, and we see it on the TV all the time. You know, it's horrific. So we can see the way the world is going, and this transhumanism, they actually want to change God's creation, you know. And this is what Noah Harari says. This is what Klaus Schwab says. They want to change us. You know, they want to change what we are as people, as God's creation. You know, they want to create us in the image of Klaus Schwab, or the Antichrist, or the Hasatan, you know, the image of Bill Gates, rather than the image of God. And we never ever want to mess around with any kind of change like that, because we know what happened in Enoch, when the fallen angels messed around with mankind and taught them things that they weren't supposed to, and just corrupted mankind, and sin got worse and worse, you know. So I will look forward to reading an Enoch 1, so we can go into that, and we can highlight that. But the same, and that's when the Lord flooded the earth with the flood, you know, and preserved Noah and his family as genetically pure. He wasn't just a follower of the Lord and a good person. He was also genetically pure, and he wasn't messed around with this Nephilim genetics. So, you know, the fact that they're doing the same thing now in a different kind of way with all this technology and stuff, is the same thing. And the Lord will not have his genetics being messed around with. He will not. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, looking for a timeline for when Jesus Christ returns, I think it's got a lot to do with the fact that they're messing around with genetics. And, you know, there's only so much that the Lord will take before he comes back. And he does say in Revelation that if he didn't come back in a certain time, then there would be no flesh left alive on this plane. So, you know, I think we run on to the next video. So I'm going to have to do 2 videos. I'm going to have to do the first 2 chapters, and then I'll do a little video with the notes on another video. So thank you for listening to Daniel. It's been really good to get into another book. God bless, and Shalom Shabbat. Bye-bye.